I don't like speculating. Um, that being said, it's come out that apparently there's up to 6 teams that could be meeting with him this week. Uh, and I've got question marks next to the ones that are kind of mentioned. It's like he could be meeting with these ones, but Vegas and Montreal are not on the list. Now, I haven't heard it directly from his agent yet or from him, but John Tavares, the most sought after free agent this summer, Toronto's on the list. San Jose and Dallas apparently are on the list, and maybe Boston, Tampa, and Nashville. It's interesting because Toronto's got a ton of cap space right now. They may not have that next summer. There may be some interesting decisions to make, but yeah, they could probably bring in Tavares, which drops Matthews down to second line center and Kadri down to third line center. And they might, with Tavares added, they might have the best center spot in the NHL. And then the argument's made that if they can't sign Tavares, they could bring in a guy like a Riley Nash to help their center depth. It's a big difference. I love Riley Nash, but there's a big difference between him and Tavares. San Jose and Dallas. San Jose's open up a lot of cap space. I think San Jose is going to make a big pitch for him. Boston, I'm also confused by because they only have $11.9 million in cap space. But if they can get rid of David Krejci and his $7.2 million cap hit, I don't know who takes it, but they can. In some world, somebody will take Krejci. Tampa Bay, they have $10.5 million in cap space, but Johnson's at $5 million and Callahan's at $5.8 million. I put Tyler Johnson up here because he's a center. So if you sign Tavares, you don't need Johnson anymore. You can sell him off for cheap. And Callahan, they may just choose to get rid of him. But that's $10.8 million between the two of them that you can use to make room for not only Tavares, but you may be able to keep Kucherov as well, which will make fans everywhere so happy. Nashville's got $12 million in cap space. Turris and Bonino I target on here because they're both centers. Turris at $6 million, Bonino at 4.1. One of them becomes redundant if they added Tavares to the team. The interesting one to me is Nashville. The idea of adding Tavares to the Nashville Predators, it does kind of give them what they didn't have against the Winnipeg Jets. I know the Pekka Rinne jokes start there, but what I'm talking about is that big center. Down the middle, the Jets were just better. For star power, the Jets were just better. And the Nashville Predators, I remember when they signed Bonino, the idea was they were trying to improve their center depth, and they bring in Turris. Turris is a fine center. He just didn't fit in Nashville. And I would not be surprised to see them move him this summer in the event that they signed John Tavares. So if these are the 6 teams that are talking to him, great. But remember, the Islanders are a team with more cap space than anybody, and they can offer max. Now, the rumor that's out there is that the Islanders have offered him $11 million a year for 8 years. Teams are going to have to go above that if they want to sign him. It's a lot of money. And the rumor with Toronto is a 1-year contract at max cap. The max cap thing reminds me of Mike Gillis with Matt Sundin. But Matt Sundin was past his prime at that point. Matt Sundin wasn't coming in at 27 years of age, so it's different. So it's more accurate to compare really when Korea and Solani took 1-year deals for cheap to play in Colorado, with the idea that, yes, they're going to win the Stanley Cup. They can't be stopped with Korea and Solani in the lineup. The problem was Korea and Solani did not fit into that lineup at all. And they had the worst seasons of their careers collectively. And that's kind of where, when I talk about there's no proof that one player will necessarily work well with another team, that's the example that I always think of is Korea and Solani. 2 of the greatest players I've ever watched couldn't do it in Colorado. It didn't work. It just didn't work. And in fact, coming out of that season, there was a lot of talk like, well, maybe Solani's just going to retire. And, so that's why the 1-year deal from Toronto, I don't know that Tavares wants to do this again in a year. So if that's what Toronto is going to pitch, and I don't know that it is, and I don't think anybody does. I think this is just a narrative Toronto media has put out there. Like, well, maybe they'll just offer him a year at max. I think he's looking for long-term security. Otherwise, the Islanders aren't offering him 8 years. The Islanders would have sat down and negotiated with him. Negotiated with him for weeks. It doesn't sound like he wants a 1-year deal. He can still circle back, take whatever offer he gets from these teams, and sign that exact same deal with the Islanders. He can go back to the Islanders and say, hey, Boston offered me 7 years at 12, and Lou goes, I'll give you 8 years at 12, and he's a $96 million man for the New York Islanders after that. It'll be interesting to see what he does, and I'm as interested in as anybody else. We may hear within the next couple of days he's got a deal done. But just looking at cap space and looking at who's under contract, I can see where they can make some room. And it'll be very interesting to see what happens with him, because this is the biggest fish we've seen going towards free agency since Stamkos. But Stamkos, remember, he did this too, and then he went back and signed in Tampa. He was like, all right, I'm just going to look at it. Okay, I'm just going to go back and take Stevie's offer. And Yzerman offered him less than other teams did too. He just said, here's my offer, and I'm done. And that was the one that ended up being taken by Stamkos. And I remember when Stamkos signed, a lot of people said, oh, man, he's ripping himself off. He's worth so much more than that. Some players, this is weird, are more concerned with the organization they're in than they are with the amount of money they make. And I think that's why it's important to note what the Islanders have been doing to change their organization this offseason. And I think that's being done in part to hopefully keep Tavares. And if it doesn't work, then they have the organizational skill with guys like Lou and Barry Trotz in charge to bring the right guys in to help mitigate that loss of John Tavares. And I honestly think with all the cap space they have and some of the interesting free agents that are out there, they might be able to absorb that loss. But we'll have to wait and see if they have that loss first. Let me know which of these teams on this list do you think is most likely to make the pitch. The one point that's been brought up too, and I'll end with this, is that Tavares is not a big fan of the press and likes to be kind of a under the radar kind of guy. He doesn't want to be like a huge star and under the spotlight all the time. If that's the case, Dallas and San Jose have an advantage. And probably Nashville, and to some extent Tampa as well. I would think that Toronto and Boston would be difficult for him, if that's true, that he doesn't want to have to worry about the press all the time. He wants to be able to just go in and do his job and go home. Toronto would definitely not work that way. Phil Kessel would be on the phone to immediately go, John, I heard this. You know what happens in Toronto, right? And Boston, I love the Bruins, but yeah, Boston has a very large and passionate fan base, and if he's looking for a more understated place to go, that's probably not the place to go. But if they can point out to him, hey, look how far we went, and if we'd had you against Tampa, we might have beat him, maybe they can make him the right offer. Again, let me know where you think he goes. It's that fun time of the year. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.